I don't often get a chance to talk, so I'm my first time. Actually, might be my first time talking on The Tonight Show.
No way, really?
Yeah.
They say Patti Smith revolutionized punk rock with her raw, rebellious energy. But the secret behind her most powerful lyrics would shock even her biggest fans. While the world saw her as the godmother of punk, spitting fire on stage at CBGB, there was a hidden ritual that fueled her genius. What if I told you that the woman who screamed about revolution found her inspiration in the quietest places imaginable? Patricia Lee Smith arrived in New York City in 1967 with nothing but dreams and a burning desire to create. Born in Chicago and raised in New Jersey, she came to Manhattan as a 20-year-old with aspirations of becoming a poet and artist. The gritty streets of the city would become her classroom, but not in the way anyone expected. Smith's early years in New York were marked by poverty and determination. She lived in cheap apartments, worked at bookstores, and spent countless hours wandering the city's cultural landmarks. While most struggling artists of her generation were drawn to the underground music scene brewing in clubs like Max's Kansas City, Smith was developing a different kind of artistic discipline. Her breakthrough came when she began performing poetry readings with guitarist Lenny Kaye in 1971. These intimate performances at St. Mark's Church would eventually evolve into full rock concerts. But Smith's approach remained rooted in something deeper than typical rock rebellion. She wasn't just screaming into microphones, she was channeling decades of artistic influence. By 1975, Smith had released her debut album, Horses, which would become one of the most influential punk albums ever recorded. Critics praised her unique blend of poetry and rock, but few understood where her lyrical inspiration truly originated. The album's success launched her into punk stardom, yet Smith maintained habits that seemed completely at odds with her rebellious image. What fans didn't realize was that behind the leather jackets and electric guitars, Smith was following a daily routine that connected her to centuries of artistic tradition. This ritual would become the foundation for some of the most iconic songs in rock history. The revelation of Smith's daily museum visits first surfaced during interviews in the late 1970s, when journalists began asking about her creative process. What emerged was a picture of an artist whose punk exterior masked a deeply intellectual and spiritual approach to songwriting. Smith revealed that she had been visiting New York's museums almost daily since her arrival in the city. The Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Museum of Modern Art, the Frick Collection, these became her second homes. Even during the height of her recording career, she would carve out time between studio sessions to walk through galleries. "I would go to the Met almost every day. It was like going to church for me," Smith explained in a 1978 Rolling Stone interview. This wasn't casual browsing. It was a disciplined practice that she treated as essential to her artistic development as guitar practice or vocal exercises. The habit intensified during the creation of her most celebrated works. While recording Horses in 1975, Smith would often leave Electric Lady Studios in Greenwich Village and walk to nearby museums. Band members and producers initially found this routine puzzling, but they soon realized it was integral to her creative process. Smith's museum visits weren't random wandering. She gravitated toward specific types of art that resonated with her poetic sensibilities. Medieval religious art, French symbolist paintings, and contemporary works by artists like Robert Mapplethorpe became her primary sources of inspiration. The connection between Smith's museum visits and her songwriting became undeniable when she began openly discussing specific artworks that inspired her most famous lyrics. The process was more direct than anyone imagined. She would literally write songs while standing in front of paintings. Smith carried small notebooks during her museum visits, jotting down phrases and images that struck her. These weren't just casual observations, but the raw material that would become some of punk rock's most poetic moments. The contrast between the serene museum environment and the explosive energy of her live performances created a unique artistic tension. Her song Birdland from the Horses album emerged from hours spent studying Hieronymus Bosch's detailed medieval paintings. The surreal imagery and spiritual themes in the song directly reflected the religious art that captivated her in the Met's medieval wing. Similarly, Free Money drew inspiration from Renaissance paintings, depicting scenes of abundance and transcendence. I would see these paintings and hear music. The colors would become chords, the brushstrokes would become rhythms, Smith later explained. This synesthetic experience, where visual art triggered musical ideas, became her signature creative method. The depth of this influence extended beyond individual songs to entire albums. Smith's 1978 album Easter was largely conceived during extended visits to the Met's Egyptian wing, where she spent hours contemplating ancient artifacts and burial art. The album's themes of death, rebirth, and spiritual transformation directly mirrored the ancient Egyptian beliefs she encountered in those galleries. As Smith's career progressed, her museum-inspired songwriting process became more sophisticated and intentional. She began timing her visits to coincide with specific exhibitions, seeking out new visual stimulation to fuel her next creative phase. The 1979 Wave album showcased this evolution. Smith spent months studying Impressionist paintings, particularly works by Monet and Renoir, during the album's creation. The flowing atmospheric quality of these paintings influenced both her lyrical imagery and the musical arrangements. Songs like Dancing Barefoot captured the light and movement she absorbed from countless hours studying Impressionist masterpieces. Smith's band members began to understand and adapt to her unique creative process. They would often find her scribbling lyrics in museum gift shops or calling from payphones outside galleries with new song ideas. This integration of high art and punk rock created a new template for artistic authenticity. The impact extended beyond her own work. Other musicians began following Smith's example, visiting museums and galleries to find inspiration. The punk scene, initially dismissive of traditional high culture, started embracing the intellectual depth that Smith brought to the movement. Smith's revelation about her museum-inspired songwriting challenged assumptions about punk rock's relationship with traditional culture. Fans who expected their punk heroes to reject all establishment institutions discovered that their idol was actually deeply engaged with classical art. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Rather than seeing it as pretentious or inauthentic, fans embraced Smith's intellectual approach as evidence of punk's artistic legitimacy. Her example showed that rebellion didn't require ignorance. It could be informed by centuries of artistic tradition. Art critics and museum curators began recognizing Smith's influence on how younger generations engaged with visual art. Museum attendance among rock fans increased, and institutions started hosting special events connecting music and visual art. Today, at 77, Smith continues her daily museum visits when she's in New York. Her 2010 memoir, Just Kids, detailed how this practice shaped not only her music, but her entire worldview. The book won the National Book Award, cementing her status as both a musical and literary figure. Smith's story reveals something profound about creativity itself, that the most powerful artistic statements often emerge from the most unexpected sources. Her punk anthems, born in the hushed halls of museums, proved that inspiration doesn't follow conventional rules. Thanks for watching. Click here to check another video and make sure to subscribe to our channel.